Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Empowering Industry Podcast. I'm your host, Charli Matthews, and I have some amazing people that I've brought to talk today about a lot of different things, really. But we're going to start with just introducing ourselves, getting to know each other. And I've known several of these people for a while, and then some newbies for me and John. Johnny, we have just met. So I'm excited about that and kind of hearing your perspective. But Tracy, since ladies first around me, I'm going to let you have the floor and just introduce yourself.
Sure, thanks. Hey, I'm Tracy Long with ABB. I'm the head of communications for the global NEMA motor division.
Johnny, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, Johnny McKusker. I'm the head of operations for the NEMA motor division.
And Mike.
Hello, Mike Murphy. I'm segment communications lead.
And you should know Mike from the podcast that we've done in the past, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. The main thing that kind of got our attention is that we were all going to, trade show season. We're out and about. What I'm doing with the IMTS Plus Creators Lounge is we're talking with creators all over the manufacturing space. And so, of course, Mike, I thought of you since we had just had the podcast, but ABB has really been creating content for a long time and in different ways, and storytelling is a reason, it's so powerful to tell a story. It helps you to remember, it helps you to connect with the manufacturing community. And so I want to spend a little bit of time, Tracy, to kind of talk about that journey of, content creation and the different tools that we use to get your messaging out in your story about how, and I would say motors, but it's more than motors, but that's the story that you can tell, right?
Right. So, Mike and I work with the motors and drives businesses here in the US, and the motor business, we've all been affiliated with it for a really, really long time. And I think what people forget is it's kind of that hidden workhorse. It's that essential component that makes other things work. So like we say, if it's not run on a gasoline engine, but it moves, it's likely using a motor like something that we would make here in the US. And so when you think about telling the story of a product like that some might not consider to be sexy, others think they're very sexy, you just have to really help make it real for people. So you have to help people understand that that hunk of iron and steel and copper wire that just plugs in and goes and does its thing is what's keeping the air conditioning running in our homes and in the convention center was when you're there. It's what helps get the water up to the floor of your hotel room, and all that kind of thing. So trying to take something that can be very technical and making it around ordinary use and make it in a way that people understand better is really kind of at the key of the storytelling element, I think. So it's being where people want to listen, it's being where they're having conversations, but then it's talking about things in a conversational way that I really think helps us connect our story with the people who are listening.
Absolutely. And it's also the way that we educate people on our products and our services out there, right? So I know that you do different white papers and different articles in the past. And right now, there's plenty of articles out there. But there's also that element of telling the news, what's the latest, what's happening. And I think all of that combined is important. But you take it one step further, and I'm gonna kind of jump back and forth here. There's a couple of things I want to talk about, but Mike, I want to give you the floor a little bit. Tell us what you've been doing with the podcast.
Sure. Thanks again for having me on. So with the podcast, I've been trying to keep up with what's happening in the industry, following a lot of trade organizations, keeping in touch with, Empowering Pumps. You guys are a wealth of information. What are those big topics that you keep seeing over and over in the industry, thinking, hey, that's going to make a great podcast? You mentioned it before, white papers, topics that you keep hearing about. So efficiency, digitalization. One of the words we're really hearing a lot about is circularity. So I've chosen some industry experts to do those recordings, and I think they've worked out really, really well.
Yeah, me too. And I think just that white paper aspect to think, and I think this is good for our creators to understand too, and just learn from us today, is to say, think of all those traditional pieces that you've created, all of that content that you've already developed and spent time, those are great resources. How can we change them into something new, like the podcast, where you're going to open, we're going to be where our audience is. And I think if we look at it, what is it, 5 different generations and one work environment, we need to be able to share that in as many ways as we can. Have you found a difference as far as content to be able to reach? Do you know who's kind of seeing the podcast? Have you established that yet? For me, I haven't. I mean, I know that there's some tools such as LinkedIn posts where I posted, did you see this podcast and what did you think of these different topics? But is there something that has more hits or listens than other topics for you?
Yeah, so our tracking, really, I'm able to see how they're listening. So is it through an Apple, iTunes app? Is it through Buzzsprout, Spotify? We're able to see that. We haven't been able to pinpoint, hey, is Charli Matthews listening into our podcast? Haven't been there quite yet, but yes, if how we advertise through social media channels, we're able to track those clicks, things like that.
Yeah, I think that I loved watching stuff like that. So I'm talking to my creators out there too, is you create a social post and then you see who interacts with it. And I think that is part of, what story did we send out? What message, what, white paper did they respond to the most? And that kind of tells us what to create more of. Speaking of listening to our audience, Tracy, I have seen ABB in so many different places and just really increasing their exposure and diversity, equity, inclusion speak, showing examples. But one thing that just stands out to me, and we're coming up, with Manufacturing Month in October, and I had just fell in love with this program. It's called Edge Factor, and you've worked with them. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Edge Factor, gosh, we were introduced to them about 6 years ago, as we were really starting to put forth our own effort of expanding, helping raise awareness of manufacturing as a career choice. As we like to say, every day is Manufacturing Day at ABB, but particularly the first Friday in October and the whole month of October is a way that we can raise awareness of manufacturing careers and all the different kinds of jobs it takes to support a whole company like we do. And so we were doing a lot in our own communities, and we were doing a lot of trying to spread that word. And then we found Edge Factor, and the best way I can describe them is a multimedia company that really promotes digital content to children in the K through 12 space, to students. They're starting to expand to older listeners as well and viewers. But they really come in and they tell that story of what's it like to be a machinist by actually talking to a machinist and finding out what what kind of skills does he has to have, or what kind of education did he get to do this job? Maybe how much does it pay? If you want to be an auto mechanic, here's what it really takes to be a good auto mechanic. Oh no, by the way, here's the soft skills you have to have. So how do you show up for work? How do you treat other people? What do you do with your phone when you're in a meeting? It's just about what it's like to actually be in a real job and hold a real job, but also helps those people understand that maybe you're not destined for college right out of high school. There's a lot of really great jobs out there. College can come later if that's what you decide you want to do, but until you become aware of your options, you really don't even know that you have choices that you have. And I think they just do a fabulous job of raising the awareness of what all the kinds of choices are and what the path is to get to those.
Yeah. And I think that we've all really thought about this and say, okay, we need to take ownership of this and responsibility of getting this into schools and to our young people so that they can think of manufacturing as a choice. And then the other part of that is, I know you've worked with schools and set up these apprentice programs and kind of if manufacturers can work with the educational institutions, this is streamlining the process, which I think is amazing and definitely what we need to do. And you definitely are an example of that. Johnny, I'm curious from your perspective, just, as we are building up our communities, you've been there for a while. So tell us, what have you seen? What is the difference being made there in the communities? And then I really want to know, what do you think this future looks like? What is the future of manufacturing?
Yeah, so the impact on our community, it's, we started this a few years ago, going around to different high schools and talking to juniors and seniors primarily. But, I think we went around to probably 10 or 15 different high schools the first couple of years. And now the word's got out and we're starting to see more and more. The workforce has changed. And I think there's some sites that's studies out there that say that 10,000 people a day are retiring, right, and leaving the workforce every day now. So we have to backfill that. And so we really looked at how we were going to do that. And some of our most successful people that we've had came to us straight out of high school and been with us 30 or 40 years. Why don't we go back to that? And we did. And so we have to market manufacturing to high school students because their perception of what manufacturing is and the reality of what manufacturing is and will be are quite different, right? So that's kind of where we're at now. And but look at the future of manufacturing. It's much of the basics will remain the same. It's still work. No matter what we do, it's still work. But we have to really look at the cleanliness, the orderliness, the organization, basic lean principles that we need to train people in thinking, and really lean thinking. How do we do things and eliminate the waste that because we have to be more efficient. I think what we're going to see is, as well as a continuation of cobots, collaborative robots working with people, but also being able to tap in and use digitalization to capture data in real time and make decisions much quicker than waiting, say, to the end of a shift or reviewing the next day. We're capturing that data quickly now, and now the challenge is, what do we do with all that big data? We have lots of sensors out there, we have people inputting data, and now we've got all these problems identified, so what are we going to do with them? But
yeah, so don't worry when we say robots. We still need our people, right? They still have got to interpret this data that we have. And I say that jokingly because I love robots, and I was introduced to that at your plant there, where the robots were picking up the motors so that the human wasn't having to do it, right? And it was interacting with them, and there was a safety piece where it wasn't just going to knock the person over. And that was this intelligent learning that it blew my mind. And this was 10 years ago. I'm pretty sure it was around that time. And I think that when I get excited about IMTS is because that is run by the Association for Manufacturing Technology. And we're going to see a lot of that digital technology bringing into this manufacturing space that you may think are just that hard, still there. What is that? How are we going to marry those two things together and learn? What do we need? What do we need in the artificial intelligence space? What do we need to make our systems more efficient? So I'm excited about that. I know we're going to see a division of ABB there, but we'll also at the same time be in Houston at TPS. So that's one of our staples. We've always been attending there for empowering pumps specifically. But what are y'all showcasing there at TPS? I see we're all looking at Tracy.
I don't mind stepping in. Yeah.
Okay,
I
Mike
out
is,
a little bit with this. Yeah. So this is the turbo
pump symposium.
Machinery pump symposium, right? ABB will be at booth 2617. I had to double check my notes on that one. But we'll have a full array of pump motors there, just how we can assist end users. I believe our highlighted item will be the IEEE 841 motor. Super rugged, just works great in those type of environments. It's got premium sealing, a PLS, which stands for positive lubrication, a bearing system, extended warranty. So very, very top product. We'll be even presenting at that show as well. So hope people swing by, come see us.
Yes. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm going to be tackling both of these events, and I can't wait to see both. And, it'll be a great report to see the differences and also just, be there with people that we know and love in our industry and just being able to be together with them. But if I kind of go back and open the floor, I'd love to hear from you. Just, do you see something else in the future for creators or for manufacturing that you're willing to tell us from your perspective? Just what do you see that's next out there?
Yeah, so I'll take that one and start is, the workforce, the people entering the workforce now, they've grown up differently than many of us that are going to be exiting the workforce. And so we're looking at ways with the digitalization that we can somewhat gamify some of our jobs, right? Make them fun, a little rewarding, challenging. We're looking at using augmented reality and virtual reality for training. Not quite there yet, but there are some use cases that are showing some promise. The YouTube type videos or video work instructions, that is something that everyone is accustomed to now. If you don't know how to do something, you go watch a video on it. And we're actually using that in our work instructions. And it allows us to also use many different languages. We have people that speak very, very different languages. And so it helps with that as well. But a little bit of gamification coming. And how do we make things a little more interesting to people than just coming in and doing something that is mundane?
Yeah. And, that brought something up. Sometimes it is easier to talk about something than to translate languages. So that's a really interesting. I hadn't thought about that before. Of like, okay, you have this manual, and because it's off a little bit, it's sometimes tricky to get those manuscripts, perfect. But if you're just having that conversation in your native language, then other people will understand you. That's interesting. I'm really kind of, y'all made me think today on the podcast, which is a great thing. Hopefully our other creators are out there inspired as well. Mike, do you have anything else to add?
Actually, I'm excited to learn about all this gamification as well. How can we turn a podcast into gamification? But no, we're still gonna keep doing our podcasts. Keep working with social media. Trade shows won't go away. It's fantastic to see people live face to face. I'm excited to see where our motors end up. Just a kind of a shout out in an upcoming show in October. WebTech will be there out there as well. I mean, motors, like Tracy said, I mean, that, anything that turns, I mean, chances are motors behind it, right? I kind of like my power to come on. When you turn that faucet on, you expect, fresh, clean water to come out, and motors are a big part of that. So that's not going away. So just excited to see the future and what Baldor Reliance and ABB has to do with all that technology.
Yeah. And to your point about that, and you were talking about this a little bit earlier on about circularity and where is our waste and how can we save energy? And I think that we're poised, if that's the best word, to be able to create a lot of change in that area and pay attention to what needs to be done and kind of be the leaders there. And so I always see you in this space. And yes, WEFTech in October. So we're going to see a lot of each other, which I love. Tracy, I'll see you and your team at the Empowering Women, which is the day after WEFTech as well.
We'll be there.
But anything else in closing from your side, Tracy, that you want to leave us with?
I'll just kind of build upon what Mike and Johnny both said. Johnny's talking about some really new ways to communicate with people. Mike's talking about some of the ways that we have been communicating with people. And I think there's what you said too about reusing the content that we have across different platforms, whether, the whole podcast began because we had done this great webinar series. And then it's like, let's take that a step further and keep talking about have those conversations. So I think as we bring in a new generation of manufacturers and we still have the existing one, what you're going to find is that platforms don't go away. You just continue to add more of them. So there will always be a place for print. There will always be a place for online. There will always be a place for social, for webinars, for podcasts, for in-person trade shows, for virtual events. And so I think we just have to be aware of the data that goes behind all of those things and use them to the very best of our ability to reach our audiences wherever it is they want to listen.
100% agree. And it reminds me of energy. And there's so many different ways that we can get energy and it doesn't go away. We just keep adding to it. We keep adjusting and adapting. And I love it. I love it. So thank y'all so much for being here with me today. And I look forward to seeing you real soon.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie.